Pleasure to have him here with us in studio today. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure, Mike. Appreciate you.
One thing I noticed about you, Johnny, and I've seen various interviews with you, obviously the very popular ones that get millions and millions of views.
Sure.
But I think the first time I really thought I've got to reach out to this guy was what you did with Jubilee, where they had the Christians versus the non-Christians, or the former Christians.
Sure.
And it was very impressive to me how you were this perfect blend of kind, humble, understanding, compassionate, but also bold and unwavering.
Amen.
Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%.
There was this one point where one of the non-Christians or former Christians was getting a little sassy with you. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. He was cutting me off. Yeah.
And knowing your background, it reminded me of that movie Carlito's Way with Pacino, where he's trying to be reformed. And he says, I got those old reflexes kicking back in. And it was uncomfortable watching that, because knowing what you're capable of, you're thinking this could end very poorly for this guy who's disrespecting Johnny to his face. What was going through your head when that was happening?
Of course, the impulsive thoughts always come where it's like, yo, this guy doesn't respect you. And really the way you put it with Carlito's Way is so true. It was like impulse was coming out of me like, man, this guy doesn't like you. He thinks you're this, that, and the other. But I also reminded myself that, hey, every time I followed Johnny and Johnny's way, violence and bad things would happen. So I learned really to distrust my first impulsive nature and to kind of think a little bit deeper and for other people. At the end of it all, we're all humans. We're all interconnected through the struggle. And that person was clearly struggling, although it was masked with a little bit of sassiness and attitude and disrespect. I could see at the core of this person's heart, there was a lot of pain, and they're also searching for happiness. So I couldn't knock them for that, to be honest. So I just naturally was able to humanize them and not take everything so personally.
What made you pick up on that these are people who are struggling and going through a lot of pain? Because I instinctively got the same sense when I watched that video, but outwardly they were all saying, no, we're much better now that we've left Christianity.
Sure.
And we're enjoying our lives now. We're free of Christianity. What gave you that sense that these people are suffering and they're in pain?
So I think because I was born into a household of like suffering and pain, my father was an alcoholic. Mother was Buddhist and very submissive. So my dad ran the household like a dictatorship. We were abused. My mother was also, abused as well. And so I'm very, very hypersensitive, very aware of people who are from household that there was either verbal abuse or some kind of trauma. We all have some type of trauma, but especially these types of people who are, going through these like identity issues and stuff like that. I could see that their challenges are something that I'm very sensitive to. And I think that in my heart, I've learned too, going to prison, to be mindful of others, believe it or not. People think prison is just this crazy place, but you actually have to be very respectful. You have to be very cautious, at least in California systems, because it's a race thing. So, I'm able to you got to, say, excuse me when you walk around people. You have to be very, again, mindful of people, very aware and hyper vigilant. And so I think that actually helps me when it comes down to it, because when I see somebody and the way they speak, the way they posture up, the way they just react to things, I can tell that, oh, this is a person who is hurting inside. And that's just how I was able to tell.
How important is it to be mindful of that, particularly in that kind of a setting when you're talking to non-believers?
Sure.
In order to be a good representation of Christ?
Yeah, it's very, very important, because at the end of the day, we are called to serve, right? True Christians believe that we're here to serve people. Just like my pastor who served me didn't give up on me. I was very sassy and very angry towards my pastor as well. I grew up traditionally Buddhist, I'm Chinese, but, I would tell the pastor, hey, I don't want to hear about this false gospel stuff. I don't care about it. But when I saw the love he showed me, the compassion he showed me, and the patience he showed me, it really did change something inside of me. It made me realize that, hey, as disrespectful as I'm being, this person is keeping his cool, and it seems like he's coming from a place of love. And so I think it's very, very important. It's very easy. The easy way is to just react and get angry. Now we're having a big argument. There is no middle ground. It's called middle ground for a reason, right? And we're just now all in our feelings, all in our emotions, and it's very immature to do something like that. Yeah.
Let's go back to your childhood because you brought that up, saying that you're hypersensitive to these sorts of things. You said that your father was an alcoholic.
Yes.
And he was not only verbally abusive, but physically abusive towards you, your siblings, and your mother.
Yes, to everybody. So it was me, my older brother, and my mother. Yes.
And when you're going through that, do you have anybody to talk to and say, hey, this is what's going on?
At that time, we didn't. Naturally, Chinese people also in our culture, just Asians in general, we're very hush hush. We're very tight lipped, meaning we don't really share or bring shame to the family like that. My mother, for example, wouldn't tell anybody as well that she was getting abused. This was just part of our culture. We don't call the police. We just handle everything in house. And so that was ingrained in me as a kid. I couldn't tell teachers. I couldn't tell anybody. My way of acting out was through violence and getting angry. So I fought a lot at school. I was suspended 3 times, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. All those years was getting, suspended. I just found like a pseudo family. And that's why I joined a gang at the age of 12. I actually started running around with the local gang in the San Gabriel Valley, Chinese gang.
I know that you say that you started with the gang at age 12, but when did the violence and the fighting start? I'd imagine earlier than that. It's not like you just wake up and say, okay, gang time.
Yeah. Exactly. It started at 10 years old. I started to steal a little bit. I started to get bullied. Where I'm from, San Gabriel Valley is predominantly a Mexican, Hispanic. So we grew up alongside the Mexicans. We grew up alongside with them, and we took a lot from their culture as well in terms of gang banging. In LA, it's very rampant. Gang banging is a culture. It really is a way of life. So, we had a lot of issues with them racially at that time when I was growing up, and I started getting bullied and couldn't walk down certain streets, and I started saying, okay, I'm gonna stand up for myself. We're gonna fight. So started fighting. I got jumped at the age of 10 by 4 other people, 4 other kids essentially. Had my backpack stolen. After a while, you just get sick of it and you start to really stand up for yourself. And then gang started to notice, oh, this kid fights. He's not gonna sit here and just like take it. And naturally, that kind of pulled that type of energy towards me. Yeah.
But it sounds like at this point you're fighting back and not looking for fights.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%.
So essentially you're defending yourself,
Yes.
but you could tell that there is violence and anger deep down inside you that is stemming from the abuse at home.
Yes. Because when I would fight at school, especially in front of large crowds, and would get suspended for it, I started to notice that, hey, which is very corrupted thinking, but I was like, you know what? Violence is better than trying to express yourself. Like violence is a universal language. And that's just what I learned at such an early age. Like, oh, I don't have to try to talk it out. I'll just punch this guy or whatever, and which was wrong. But it really taught me at that time to like, solve things through defending myself violently, I guess. Yeah.
You say you could sense other people's pain, and as you were discussing with that other person and that other video, were you feeling pain and expressing that through your violence?
Yes, absolutely. I remember when I would fight, I had the mentality to like fight to death. They were just bullying now that I think about it as kids, but in my head I was taking up all the pent up rage that I had towards my father, and I was just unleashing that every time I would fight, so it was really bad. And I think now that I see people who they have the same kind of characteristics, as I go to these prisons, as I see people on like the Middle Ground Jubilee episode, I can see that actually there's a lot of rage inside of them. There's a lot of like uncertainty, there's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of just like sensitivity, and so I'm actually very sensitive to that because of that.
Is there any thought process that goes into that when you're 9-10 years old? At that point, are you being abused for a number of years already? Or?
Yeah. I remember the abuse started at 5 years old. So it was 5. I was getting beat up, dragged through through the rooms, hung upside down, pretty much getting whipped by the belt. I mean, it was a lot, and after that, I felt like it was normal. And honestly, a lot of in the Asian culture, a lot of people, Hmong people, Vietnamese people, Koreans, they all went through that. A lot of people that I was locked up with were all actually abused as kids. And, they were disciplined in this way because my father was also disciplined in that way too. My grandpa did the same thing to my father. It was a generational thing, definitely. Yeah.
And so what's going through your head? Like, what is that? How does that feel when you're that young and that's going on?
It was confusing at first. I just remember I was fearful of everything. Like I was scared to like come out the room. I was scared to like get bad grades. I was like very scared, but I also had so much like anger because of that.
Mm.
And I remember like just blowing up at every little thing. I couldn't play a game of basketball. I was a sore loser at everything. You know, I just couldn't handle my emotions, and I didn't understand why I was like that. So it was weird. It was like I was frustrated that I was frustrated. I was mad that I was mad, and I didn't understand. So even at the age of 10, I always felt like this emptiness, and I always felt like I didn't fit in with the regular kids, you know, and I would have like almost envy and like hate towards kids who would have good parents, you know, who would have, you know, people who bought them clothes. Cause I also grew up in Section 8 project housing, right, on the east side of Los Angeles. So also, you know, I was just very frustrated and I just remember it being very cloudy and very just like angry all the time and just lost at this. It was just a mix of emotions.
And so is that why you don't go to any other adults, like a teacher or something like that, and say this is going on because you just think this is normal at this point because it's all you know as a child?
Yeah, at that point, I just felt like it was normal. And I felt like people wouldn't, I don't know, I just felt bad. It was weird. Like, I felt like it was wrong to like tell on my own father. I felt like it was just wrong because all my uncles, all my aunties, same thing. Like, nobody ever really said much. Like, we're not very expressive people, you know, Asian people. So I just remember like, oh, I can't go there. Like, there was times where like cops would come, they would knock on the door and they would maybe hear my mom like screaming or something because she was getting hit. And then he would just be like, don't say anything. Right. And I'm just like, okay, you know. And I was more fearful of my father than I was the police. And so that was yeah, it was definitely it was very, very scary at that time.
When you're going through that, do you ever go to your mom and say, what is going on here? Why are we doing this? Or do you just kind of take it on the chin because you're seeing that she's dealing with the same thing?
Yeah, I actually I resented my mom for a very long time. You know, I remember thinking like, why did she choose a man like this? Like, what's wrong with her? You know? And my mom, she was very submissive, you know, so she just was like, you know, that's just how dad is. And there was really, again, not much communication between even me and my mother. And yeah, because of the communication issues that we had, we were just yeah, we were both just struggling. And even my brother, like, I never really talked to my brother. You know, it would just be like orders, you know. It was like, bro, just sit there, dad's tripping right now, you know. That's it. Like, it wasn't like, hey, what do you feel, how are you doing, how was your day? There was none of that. It was always like, be careful, dad's coming in, bro, he's having a bad day. You know, be careful, like, bro, don't do that, dad already knows you're gonna, you know what's gonna happen. And so it was very yeah, it was very, very like confusing and just lack of communication, that type of environment.
That's so sad. I mean, how does that make you feel being a dad yourself today?
Honestly, it makes me, I think, a better person, you know, because I understand that everything is by grace. And what I mean by that is, you know, I kind of had to go through those things in order to kind of shape the person that I am. I think that, you know, it allows me to have this contrast and comparison where I know how to raise my kid based off of, you know, my experience with my parents, you know. Of course, I'm also stern with my child, but I don't try to, you know, impose anything on him. I try to let him like learn on his own. Definitely don't abuse him, you know. But I've learned that, yeah, at the end of the day, there is no manual for being a parent. Like, it's just something that you just gotta do, you know. So I've since, you know, forgiven my father, and I think that's what I went viral for. That's what a lot of people know me for on Soft White Underbelly, De La Fe Testimonies, is that, you know, I've apologized, me, the victim, apologized to the aggressor, and that's what kind of changed and shifted the dynamic. My father today is a different person, you know, completely stopped drinking, goes to church with me. You know, I meet him once a week. We go out to eat, we go fishing. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, you know, but I wasn't able to do that without my pastor and without, honestly, my faith. So, yeah.
So when you get to 10 years old and you start with the aggressive behavior, the fighting, not yet in a gang, how does that all start? Is it that you finally blow up, all this anger comes out, you take these guys out and realize, oh, I can do this. I've got this power that I didn't know that I had.
Yeah.
Was there a clicking moment like that at some point where you got into one fight and realized, oh, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That I did get into one fight, and that one fight was the pivotal moment for me to not only recognize that again, violence was something that was, sadly to say, successful for me at that time, and it was working, but I also had kind of caught the attention of other people, and they were like, "Man, this kid fights like his life is on the line," And again, gangs are always looking for that crash dummy, as we say, that knucklehead who's willing to do everything and anything to represent the neighborhood. So, yeah, they noticed that and they gravitated towards me. They watched from afar at first, but then they started to kind of approach me. They tested me a little bit, obviously, in the beginning. And what I mean by that is like they hit you up, they bang on you, which means they ask you what gang you're from, just to see if anyone's if you're from anywhere. And I said I wasn't. I'm from nowhere. And from then on, I started hanging out with them, and the rest was history, basically.
So how are you exposed to these people, though? How do you even start meeting guys who are in that life?
So when I was 12, I started to see them. They were all over in the late 90s, early 2000s, LA was just full of gangs. That was like the Tupac, Biggie, Smalls era. Gangsta hip hop was just coming up, so it was influential in all cities in LA, all counties in LA as well, and even in Inland Empire and Orange County. So I would see them driving their little, we call them rice rockets. They're souped up cars, Acura Integras, Honda Civics. And these guys had the style, they had the money, they had the prestige, they had the respect, they had the power, they had the women. And so that was something that when I saw, I was like, I want to be a gangster, but I don't know how. I don't know the initiation process. I don't know anything about it. I just seen the lavish lifestyle that they lived. And so, when they actually hit me up, I remember I saw it almost as an opportunity. And when I hung out with them, my big homies, meaning my OGs, the heads of the gang, would take me out, feed me, buy me clothes, things like that. And so I was like, wow, these people are like my real family. They're better than my father. They're not hurting me. And I remember like having that heart of like, man, I'll die for my homies. I'll die for these people because they're the only ones. They show me more love than my own family. Right. So, from then on, it was just I made that determination in my heart. Like, I'm going to do everything I want to do. Schooling, stuff like that, I'm not going to do. I'm going to be this gangster. So I went all in at 12 years old. I made that decision. And they just approached me. I was like, I want to do everything, raised my hand for everything, volunteered for everything, what we call knuckleheads. And that's what landed me in California Youth Authority and prison as well.
Now, when you said that you're always looking at this point in time to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's your number one priority.
Yeah.
Do you think that stems to some degree from going through so much pain for all those years on your way up? You're constantly feeling pain and suffering. I need to feel something on the extreme opposite.
Yeah.
Is that, do you think, where it comes from?
I think so. I think so. I think, definitely being told what you can and can't do, had an effect. But I think I just had this mindset to really trust myself because, I know that environment kind of has a big play and a role in shaping a human being. But I also had friends who grew up in the same areas that I was, and they ended up graduating UCLA, working for Deloitte, top 5 accounting firm. And I mean, so I think I do remember I always had this, I want to do what I want to do. Even at the age of 5, like my dad would hit me, like, I would still be like, no, I'm going to still do it. I want to do this. I want to do that. Fearfully around him. But once I like left the house, I just forgot about him. So I do remember having this type of mindset, like from a very young age, like Johnny's going to do what Johnny thinks is good. And whatever Johnny doesn't like, he's not going to do it. Like chores, I would like, even when I would be doing them, it's only because I was forced to, and I would like find ways to kind of wash only the top, not the bottom. I'd find these little shortcuts. So I was always like that as a kid, very cunning, very manipulative, very schemy, and very just trusting and believing all of myself. Because I thought if I did everything I wanted to do, I would be happy. And the things I didn't want to do, just made sense to me. I'm not going to be happy doing them, so I'm not doing it. Discipline, chores, homework, I'm just not doing that. I'd rather cheat. I'd rather just do that. And I just had that mindset from a young age.
So it sounds like a little bit of a bad combination of the
Yeah.
perfect storm, because you had these traumas going on in your upbringing, but you also seem to have a little bit of a predisposition towards that
Yes.
type of an attitude. Let me ask you this. You said that you grew up with others who ended up having successful careers and
Yeah.
not being wrapped up in the criminal justice system.
Sure.
Was their family life any different than yours? Was their family setting any different?
Same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who's still talk to him till this day, my best friend. And yeah, he works for Deloitte. Another friend of mine went to Berkeley. All came out from the San Gabriel Valley, all came out from Section 8 project housing. Abusive fathers, or some of them didn't even have fathers, just a single parent household, just mom. Lost their parents to, father to gambling addiction, stuff like that, but was also very abusive. The mother was abusive towards one of my friends, burned his hand. I mean, did all kinds of stuff, but he grew up to be successful. And I remember him because, when we were walking through the projects, he, the local drug dealer was like, "Hey, Johnny, let's smoke some weed." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." It's 12 years old, and then I remember him going, "Oh, no, no, no. What if I get caught? My mom's going to whoop me. What if I get addicted?" And I remember me and the drug dealer just laughing at him like, "Bro, off weed? Are you kidding me right now?" But needless to say, he walked away, and he never ended up, going to jail like me. He doesn't have any record. He's graduated high school, graduated college, obviously, works for Deloitte. So I was able to see that just from that, he didn't trust himself. Like, he didn't trust his ability to not be an addict. Mind you, that this is when the crack era is heavy, and when people are still doing like meth and stuff like that. So we see in the projects meth heads, crackheads all over the place. And yet here's this stupid little 12-year-old. "Oh, I'm not going to be addictive. Like, I'm not going to be addicted to that. I'm stronger than that. I'm better than them." And this kid saw that and was like, "Ooh, like my uncle's on it, my cousin's on it. Yeah, and they're stronger than me. I don't think I don't have the willpower." And he just recognized that. So I do believe it was a mentality thing. It's more of like, do you trust yourself or do you not trust yourself? If you trust yourself, you're going to touch the drugs like I did. I touched the weed, went to meth, went to coke, went to everything else. He was like, "I'm not touching this because I think I'll get addicted." And for some reason, because of that, he didn't touch the drug. So he could never actually get addicted. If you don't touch it, there's no way to get addicted to it, right? So,
Sure.
yeah.
When you go into the meth and the coke, is that when you're 12 years old or later on?
Later on, 16 years old. And then, as I got out too, I was doing it for a little bit as well. So yeah.
Let's go back to that 12-year-old range. So you're involved with gang activity now. Is there any trouble with school, or they calling home and stuff like that, saying Johnny's in fights and Johnny's suspended and everything like
100%. Yeah, 100%. But the thing is, being that my parents were immigrant parents, they didn't really understand English.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so my dad was, like, "Johnny," and he's like, "Oh, no English." That was just his, "No English." "Yeah, but sir, we're trying no English," because it was hard for him, and my mom understood more than him, but she was like, "Oh, okay." And, she would try to like go to the parent, teacher conference meetings or whatever. But again, the language barrier, it was, like I said, a perfect combination of just allowing me to just run wild. And I never really faced any repercussions, except for, obviously, my dad would be like, "You're suspended. Why are they telling you to stay home for like 4 days?" And I was like, "Because I got into a fight." And, "Oh, you like fighting?" Boom, boom, boom. And he'll beat me up,
wow.
So that's the only times. Other than that, he didn't really care about my grades. He didn't really care about anything. Like, he didn't understand any of that stuff.
Are they
honestly.
picking up on the fact that you're hanging out with a different crowd by that time?
They didn't
Not
pick
at
up.
all.
Yeah, I was very good at masking it. I would bring change of clothes. I mean, I would, just go home and just be still submissive, but in my mind, like, having this end goal of like, I'm gonna make more money than my deadbeat dad. I'm gonna make more money than my submissive mom, and I'm just gonna move out. I'm gonna run away. I don't care about them. They're not my family. They're dead to me. So although I was living and existing in front of them, it was truly like a front almost.
Now, when you first get in trouble with the criminal justice system, the final plea ends up being something related to a gang. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yes.
Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that.
Yeah, so originally it was a kidnapping robbery charge. Because it was my first offense, they did drop it down to dissuading a witness for the benefit of a gang.
Mm-hmm.
They were basically doing a investigation on my gang at the time. They were about to RICO us. They had a gang injunction on us, and they were like, okay, so. This guy, the DA, I remember like presenting this, saying that this kid is from this gang, called me a child assassin,
Oh, wow.
grooming me into being a child assassin. So they're like, you know what? We're going to put him at California Youth Authority, which is a juvenile ward. It's worse than regular camp, boot camp, and juvenile facilities. It's where you go for the worst of the worst, right? Juvenile offenders, juvenile wards. And yeah, I thought, when I took the fall, I thought that I was just gonna do like a year max. They gave me 4 years, so I was like, man. And from then on, I maxed out, which means you do all of your time,
Mm-hmm.
and 100% of your time. And because I was fighting a lot, and it's impossible for the people who know, who's been to LA, they understand that YA, we call them YA babies. It's very different. There's all kinds of crazy stuff happening in there, and so yeah. So I did, you fight it's almost every day that you have to fight. And yeah, I did the full 4 years there.
Any exposure to drugs inside?
No, actually. At that time, I wasn't exposed to the drugs in there. No, it was hard to get them in. It was just a lot of gang banging and fighting. Like, you're from this gang, this guy came in. Okay, I'm from this gang. It doesn't matter if I know this guy. It doesn't matter if he's 6 foot. It doesn't matter if he's 16, 17, and I'm only 12. We're going to fight.
And was it a different kind of fighting than you were used to on the outside? Was this, we're in the big leagues now sort of thing?
Absolutely. Because everyone in there is pretty seasoned.
Mm-hmm.
From the age of 12 to 16, I had gotten into, from what I can count, like 40 something fights.
Wow.
40 plus fights, so yeah, you're I mean, even the worst fighter, after a few fights, you're gonna start to learn how to head movement, how to fight and stuff. So yeah, definitely. It's a whole different ball game. Yeah.
When you accepted the plea, do you remember what you were looking at had you gone to trial and lost?
Oh man, I don't remember, but it was a long time. I remember it was a long time. I think it was like 15 to 19, something like that, something crazy, because I know robberies was a big thing. But yeah, they were giving me that.
So even though you thought it was going to be a year, had they presented 4 years, you probably would have taken it anyway.
Yeah.
It's too much to risk.
Yeah, because I also had the OGs in my ear. I had my friends were like, bro, just take the deal, because you don't know, Johnny, like what we did was kind of crazy. And I'm like, for real? Because you're 12, you don't understand the judicial system, you don't understand the, all the problems. So yeah, it was crazy. They told me just take it, bro, just do it.
Is there any interaction with your parents leading up to this?
My parents, yes. My mom was always at the court. My dad didn't visit at all. I think he was too painful for him to see that, or he was frustrated. I don't know. But my mom, yeah, crying every single time. And I think that's what really made me on edge, was like, man, dude, like, why is she coming here? She's just crying. It's making it worse for me, But I understand now why she was doing that, obviously. But yeah, I just remembering back to the emotions that, she was just always sad. It was really sad. Yeah.
Now, to this point, you'd been raised Buddhist, you said, right? So mom was a practicing Buddhist even up to that point. 12, you're going away, she's Buddhist.
Yeah.
What was that like? What were the themes running through the household because of that? Do you feel like there was any kind of a foundation instilled in you or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believed in karma at the time. My mom talked a lot about karmic debt, meaning she has to do good deeds to outweigh her bad deeds. She always believed her life was cursed because she reincarnated into what she was, and her life before, she must have been like an evil person. So that's why she's having such bad things happening. So I think that's what made my mom submissive, was like, you know what, I deserve this almost, which now is, when I think about it, is very sad. But that's what a lot of monks told her at the time, sadly, was you deserve this, you something happened to you. So you just got to live your whole life being submissive, disconnecting yourself from the world, practicing things like yoga, practicing mind and body control, and, heaven and hell, nirvana, they say, is in the mind. So I remember her saying that a lot. Johnny, it's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. You have to overcome whatever, even in prison, she's like, it's in your mind. It's in your mind. But I remember, Yeah, she just always was submissive to my dad. She would get up, she would be the first one out of bed, and she would be the first one in bed, out of respect for my father. She allowed him to run everything. And yeah, that was something that I saw, was just submission on such an extreme level. And I think that's something that I really like I said, I resented her for that.
And did you have a strong connection to that? Because it sounds like later on in life, when you're presented with Christianity,
Yeah.
you kept going back to, no, we're Buddhists.
Yeah.
So did you have a strong connection to it?
I did, in the fact that I did believe that I was the master of my own destiny. I did believe that everything was in your mind. I did believe there's a battle in the mind, and but at the same time, I think it was more of a cultural thing. So when I got to prison, traditionally, if you go to prison in California, you have to run with your race. So if you're Mexican, you run with Mexicans. Asians run with the other car, meaning everybody else who's not Mexican, black, or white. And so we had, a lot of Asians in that car. We had a lot of, Samoans, Polynesians, Islanders. So there was a lot of sense of pride. We moved as a unit, and so much so that all the gang stuff would drop, and you would then become a race. Like, yes, you're in a gang. Of course, if my enemy is in there, we don't have issues. We have to actually be buddy, because it's now a numbers thing. It's one Asian to 80 Hispanics, for example. You can't fight in-house. You're not going to stand a chance. So we had to be unified like a unit. And so there was this pride of like, yeah, I'm Chinese. I represent the Chinese car. And all the Chinese people in there were Buddhists. So actually, if they saw that you were Christian, it was very looked down upon, because they were arrogant. They're like, oh, this is a white religion, this is colonized, and you don't do that. So I remember shifting more to Buddhism during the time that I was in prison, because I was like, you know what, this is for me. And it's weird. It was like they didn't do that with Islam or Muslims. They did that only with Christianity and Catholics, which I found was odd. If you could be Asian and Muslim in there. I was Muslim in there for 3 years, so I gravitated towards it just because I think it was a cultural thing, and obviously through tradition. But and my mom would come and visit and give me chants. Buddhists, they're very well known for these chanting. So I would chant and chant, and she's like, you got to chant away the evil spirits. You got to be one with this energy, this chi. And so,
but it wasn't working, was it?
Not at all. Not at all. I was pretty crazy.
So you get out of would you call it YA?
Yeah.
Got to forgive me. I'm not licensed to practice in California.
No worries.
So you get out of there, and then what? You just go right back into the gang?
Yeah. So I think during the time that I was in YA, I had this mindset of like, everyone's going against you. You got to stand up for yourself. Because in YA, they teach you that forget about your family. Once you're in YA, it's like the cuckoo house. They know that you're going to go crazy because you're fighting every day. You see all kinds of just evil things, that children are doing to children, youth are doing to youth, So I come out and I'm on this high power, meaning, okay, I'm hyper vigilant and I'm almost paranoid. And, in there, if you get disrespected, within 2 seconds, if you don't handle your business, meaning you don't punch them, you don't assault them or do something, then essentially you will get labeled as like a punk, meaning you'll get taken advantage of, right? So we
other words that we probably can't say on the air too, right?
Exactly. right. So they'll do that, and then so when I got out of prison, I was always like this like super like gangster person. I took it to another level. If you disrespect me, you look at me wrong, it's going to be a problem, and it's going to resort most likely to violence. And so coming out, I was only out for 67 days. I still remember. Yeah. 2 months and a week. And went right back in for a shooting on the freeway, car-to-car shooting. And they charged me with obviously attempted and all these other charges, shooting at an inhabited vehicle, this, that, and the other. And I pled out. I took a deal for assault with deadly weapon, 2 counts. And yeah, I ended up doing 10 years, essentially 10 years, 85%.
Now, when you're in with YA, you're only out a short period of time. It never crossed your mind when you were in with YA, hey, maybe I don't want to be back in a place like this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this isn't all that much fun, and maybe I need to do something to change. Never crosses your mind at all while you're in YA?
Honestly, we couldn't think that far because you're fighting every day. Even though I wanted to change, you're literally like in a battle for your life every day. Like I said, there's you got to watch out for the prison guards, because even now people can research it. The prison guards were doing things to the children too, taking advantage of them and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was bad. And there's lawsuits now. A lot of these YAs have been closed down. Not all of them. The one I was at, Nellis YA, has been closed down. In Whittier, it's closed down completely. But that place was like gladiator. They call it gladiator school, because you're just only focused on fighting and fighting and fighting and all that crazy stuff, riots and stuff like that. So yeah, you don't have a chance to really think, because it's almost like PTSD every day. It's just like, oh man, it's like something's gonna happen, boom, this group gets up and then this group gets up, and you're just like, yo, what's going on? You're like defending yourself. So I really didn't have time to think like, what's gonna happen with my life? It was like, this is life right now. You need to protect yourself. By all means, you need to live. And if you don't, you will get taken advantage of by everybody, from the COs, correctional officers, all the way down to every race in there. They'll take advantage of you. So you really need to like stand up for yourself. And that we were just focused on that impulsive thinking. First thought that would come out of my mind, rage, anger, boom, react on it. And so it took a lot of unlearning for me, because again, that was just something that we were cultivated in there, this mindset of just madness and insanity.
That's crazy. So you're out for a little over 2 months and then right back in.
Yeah.
You fall back in. You leave YA and you just go hang out with the same guys? Is that what's going on? You just right back into the life?
Yeah. I come out. They take me out, and they have their little dinner, a little party and
stuff. It's like Goodfellas.
Exactly. They're like, hey, But and we're just eating, and next thing you know, it's like, we got to make some money. We share our little stories and stuff like that. Here's a pistol, take care of yourself, and here's some money, and you just go out, fend for yourself again. And I didn't last, like I said, more than 2 months.
And you're 16 at that point?
16.
And so then you're in until you're 26?
Yeah, I'm in until, basically 20, yeah.
And is there anything in your mindset that changes in that 10 years that you're on the inside? You say that you become Muslim for a little while?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So in prison, if you actually, think about it, like, it's weird. Only Christians are kind of looked down upon. If you're Muslim, they actually respect you. And I don't know why, but even till this day, it kind of boggles me. But I go in there, and we had chaplains. We had, priests coming in there. But I chose and decided Muslim because when I went in there, they were very like Bible thumpy. They were very, hey, if you guys don't change, you don't repent, you're going straight to hell. And I was like, I'm not trying to hear that. I'm in hell right now. I'm in prison, So, but then I remember the Muslims being very peaceful, very, very, I had a cellmate as well. He was Muslim. His whole family was from a line of, Sunni Muslims, and he was just chill. He's very peaceful, seemed very wise, very intuitive, So, I gravitated towards that. And he was like, yeah, bro, don't go to Christianity. They're all hypocritical, and he's like saying all these bad things. And I'm like, amen, they are hypocritical, And so, he actually was like guiding me through that. And through him, I was able to learn how to pray. I was able to fast, Ramadan, and also fast. And also read the Quran front to back 3 times with him. So he was in his book, and I really admired that about, because that's the first time I've seen somebody with structure and organization and determination and discipline in their life. I just seen everybody else just crazy. And I seen this guy, and I was like, yo, this guy's in a place of madness and chaos, but he's peaceful. And I was like, I want that peace, So I did gravitate towards that. But the one thing I couldn't get rid of was this emptiness in my heart. And this guy, him and another older Asian guy, these OGs, they're all peaceful. They're lifers, meaning they're never going to get out. They're going to die in prison. And they're like, Johnny, you overthink a lot. You're hyper vigilant. You're very sensitive. So you should do anger management, because they had anger management in there, and they had counseling in there. And I got my GED all through these 2 people. But although I was on the up, spiritually, emotionally, mentally even, I still felt that emptiness and void inside of my heart. I couldn't get rid of it. It was like a hole in my chest. It was so crazy.
So you went towards Islam because you thought he was a good representative of something that you wanted to be a part of. It
Absolutely.
wasn't necessarily the inner workings of the religion itself.
Sure.
It was more about, here's somebody in the flesh who's living this thing, and if he's like that, I kind of want to be like that. Am I getting that right?
Yes, 100%.
And is that sort of how you try to be for Christianity? Because I think that when you're involved in those situations like the Jubilee video,
sure,
and somebody tries to get you into this confrontation, and you don't respond the way people expect you to respond, it is being good representative. Is that what you try to do?
I never thought about it like that, but I think it is like that. I just do feel inner peace, and I think the same thing with that person. He with my cellmate, he was also feeling inner peace too. It just emanate, like he emulates that, right? It pours out of him. So I feel like, same thing with me. Like, I do have this type of inner peace now, and that's what people recognize. They're like, dude, how did you go from like this crazy environment to just being chill all the time? And I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's from Christianity, but I also feel like it's also just being around good mentors, good leaders, people who actually care. And when you're around, like, for example, gang members, you're going to be a gang member. If you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut, right? So if you're around peaceful people who are high value, who are very, very intuitive, who think for other people, are compassionate, empathetic, then that naturally is just how you're going to be.
Iron sharpens iron.
Amen. 100%. 100%.
Hey, one other thing about Muslims that you got to say is that they're incredibly disciplined people, like you were saying.
Yes.
Some Christians can't be bothered to do this or that.
Yeah.
But those Muslims, man, that time to pray comes, they got their rug out there, they're on their knees, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
A majority of them, absolutely. They're definitely in their faith, I would say. They have the discipline down pat. They have the good deeds outweigh the bad deeds. That's what I was taught too. You got to do good deeds outweigh the bad deeds. And then they say inshallah, which means God willing. Will you get to heaven? Only God knows, but you have to at least try your best. So that's what they teach. And for me, I was like, man, I'm trying my best, but I'm like an imperfect person trying to produce perfection. And I think that's why I keep feeling empty, because I keep falling short. So I just couldn't. And that's what actually gravitated me away from that religion, was because I was like, bro, what do I do with this emptiness? And even he was saying, hey, it's part of it, brother. Like you that's humans, we go up and down, and we're just empty, bro. And that's just how it is. And being empty is good to God. So this is what it is. And I'm just like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, so yeah.
And when you get out, are you still practicing Muslim?
No. Yeah. So after that, my mom, she started to come to the prisons about 4.5, 5 years. She just switched. She's like, yeah, I'm Christian now. And I'm like, what? I remember getting really mad at her. I could be a Muslim, but she can't be a Christian,
Right, yeah.
And I was just like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, oh my gosh, dude, like you're crazy now, you're brainwashed, and she's like, no, Johnny, like I'm actually very happy. And here's some script. I was like, Mom, I'm not going to listen to no damn scriptures. I'm sorry to say. But she was just like, well, okay. And what was different about my mom was like, she didn't force it upon me, whereas like a lot of these people, these Christians in prison, they were forcing it. Yo, bro, you got to change. If you don't, you're burning in hell. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear that. Hey, bro, you're empty because you don't have God. And I'm just like, I don't care, I'll stay empty. And it just hardened me more the more they were pushing it onto me. I understand that it was by good intention, but I take it like this, although there's good intentions, like let's say, if I take vegetables, right, and I, try to feed it to my child, and I'm like, vegetables are good, but if I take a spoon and I jam it down his throat, that's called child abuse, no matter if it's kale, no matter if it's veggies. I think there's a timing for everything. And I think that's the issue with a lot of people, is that they don't know the timing, and they're like, this is so good, and they just try to push it onto people. And even though it's good, it actually pushes people away from the faith. So I never do that. And
that's a major struggle with a lot of people. And I could understand the point of some people when they say, well, if your house was burning down,
Sure.
I wouldn't want to stand on the outside and just say, he'll figure it out when he's ready that the house is going to burn down. You wonder, hey, your house is burned. You got to get out of here right now. You don't understand. So there's a really difficult sort of balance that needs to be had there.
Sure.
But there are a lot of people who, like you in that video, where they've had bad experiences with Christian people.
Yeah.
Right? It's less about Christianity than the Christian people they've had the experiences with that have driven them away.
Sure.
If you don't mind, I want to bring Caden in on this because I've been working with Caden for a little while now.
Sure.
I don't know much about your background in terms of this stuff. Caden, have you had any exposure to the church yourself?
Sure thing. And sorry about that. But yeah, growing up, my family wasn't very religious. I think the most exposure I had is, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this, but I used to go to the Unitarian church for a little while. And
Yeah.
they practice all sorts of religions there. So I think it was actually really great exposure for me, because you get people in there that are, Jewish, Muslim, any religion. They had Satanists going there too. So really all over the place. I kind of got to see a lot and learn a lot there. But that was kind of my experience growing up.
Had you had any negative experiences or exposures to Christians in any other capacity, whether it's in a church or outside of the church or anything like that? Because I'm always curious as what puts people off to Christians have these kinds of experiences.
I guess so. I can definitely see that angle of it. And I'd say I think I have before, but it was never something where I would tie it to Christianity or religion. I'd say it's more of a reflection of person to person,
facts,
rather than the religion. So yeah.
And I thought it was a common theme throughout all your videos. You're talking to Soft White Underbelly, and he says to you, "I'm not a religious person."
Yeah.
And you don't back down from what you believe in, but you get a very sort of gentle way for such a inherently violent guy. You get a gentle way to bring this across. Is that something you consciously do, or does it again go back to you're at peace?
I think honestly, I just understand. Like, I understand that, I was there once where I'm just like, don't talk to me about this, and I have my beliefs. And I think it's important to like lead, people the right way. So I'm always thinking about other people now, whereas my whole life up until I, became Christian was always thinking about myself, very self-centered, very narcissistic, very me, I mentality. Nowadays, when I think of people, I'm always thinking like, what struggles are they going through? What made them go through that? And it makes sense. I struggled and I wasn't Christian at one point. So what makes me better than them? So it's weird. I always feel like I come from a position of like, I'm not better than this person. Mark, for example, who is the producer of Soft White Underbelly, he said that. He's like, I'm agnostic. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I get it. If you don't feel like you need God, then I'm not going to sit here and thump you and say I'm better than you because this, that, and X, Y, Z. Right. If you're happy, then you're happy. I don't really try to force it onto people, but I just try to share what made me happy. And it's almost like an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's like you could have the chow mein if you want. You could have the steak if you want. I mean, whatever it is, if you can take from my lessons and my stories that'll help you, then no worries. But my overall goal is just to share my story and just to be like, okay, God, you prepared people for me. I don't need to go out and fish these people. God says, I will make you a fisher of man. He doesn't say go and fish for people and you do this and you do that. God is the creator. I'm the creation. I don't have to do anything. He has to do everything. So I just leave it at that. And naturally people gravitate towards that. I hear that all the time. Bro, man, I was expecting you to be all like being a gospel gangster, jumping on me and using your violence and hey. And I'm like, bro, I don't even like that. Why would I do that to you? So it's peace, but it's also thinking for others. I think that's something that I've learned to do, whereas I just never thought for anybody else. And that's what led me to misery. When I'm me, I'm isolated, don't care about anything. And, I use analogy of like a marriage, when let's say a woman gets married to a man, and if she's only thinking about her happiness and her peace and not thinking about her spouse, and then her husband's doing the same, they're not united, they're divided, right? So that marriage will not last. But a successful marriage will be when, okay, the husband thinks about the wife and the wife thinks about the husband, their happiness, their peace. And then naturally peace, happiness, unity flows from that. That's the byproduct byproduct of it. So same thing, when I'm thinking for other people who are hurt, I'm like, okay, maybe I should stop talking right now, because if what I'm saying is going to be hurtful, it doesn't do anything.
Right.
So I'm just like, I'm good. And in Jubilee, I said what I needed to say. And then there's times where I just stood quiet, and I got backlash for that too. So it's weird. It's like, damned
Really?
if you do. Yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
What kind of backlash?
Some of these Christians were like, Johnny, you didn't represent correctly. You should have told them that they're sinners. There's those people.
Right.
Right.
But if you sat there, let's say, this is a little bit of a different example, but
Sure.
when you're talking about Mark saying that he's agnostic and he's a non-belief, doesn't believe in Christ.
Sure.
If you would have said to him, well, that means you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Do you think that he's going to say, oh, well, why didn't you say so? I'll be Christian now. Of course not. It's going to be totally counterproductive.
Yeah.
And that's what these people are expecting you to do in these interactions.
Yeah. And so that's why I with those people, if you notice, like, Jesus rebuked his own people more than actual sinners and Gentiles. Pharisees, for example, they have this pharisaical heart, meaning I'm better than them. Like, we're better. If we ever come and approach somebody that, with that type of heart and mentality that I'm better than you and you should listen to me, no one's going to listen to you, So, I really feel like, sadly to say, and I'm going to say this honestly, people who do that are not true Christians, because we're taught to show compassion, to understand people, right? And we're not taught to be like, you need to tell them the truth, even if you have to break their arm to save them. Like, that's not necessarily what it is. There's a time for that, absolutely. But at the same time, it's like these people are confused. They're like on the Jubilee episode, they don't really know what they're saying. 1 minute they're saying, if you really pay attention, they're saying, oh no, I'm happy, I'm great. And the next minute they're like, yeah, but I have a mental illness, and I have these intrusive thoughts. And I'm like,
right.
How can you be happy while having intrusive thoughts? It's impossible.
Sure.
So they don't know what they're saying. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna sit there and go, you don't know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, right? I've been through it all. Like, no, I'm gonna be there and be like, oh, like, I almost feel pity towards them. Like, man, that sucks. What they're going through.
Yeah.
And so when that comes, like, I just quiet down. And yeah, there's some, like, it goes both sides. Getting back to the point is, there's some Christians who will say, yeah, and you should have went harder, bro. You didn't represent us. You got to stand up and stand 10 toes on your faith. You got to basically tell them that they're wrong, bro, even if it hurts them, because they need to hear the truth. There's that, which some people agree with. And then there's other Christians who are like, yo, Johnny, like, you said too much, and I'm just like, whoa, I said too much. So either I didn't say enough or I said too much. Bro, you shouldn't have said that, sin is like a virus, because then you're saying that they're a virus. And I'm just like, no. I'm making an analogy here. I'm saying that all of us have this virus of sin. We all fall short. And if you take the measuring stick and the standard of God, no one's better than anybody.
Zero.
Like, so how can I judge him? And they're like, oh, well, and then they get it. But it's just like I said, we're not the judge. We don't get to judge people. We have our own flaws. We all have our demons. We all have our trauma. We all have our things. And that's why I say we're interconnected, interlinked through the struggle. And if you think that way, then you won't take anything personal. You really will be unbothered, because you're like, oh, I get it. I get why they're tripping, because they're struggling right now. I get why these gang members, when I go to prison, are also testing me. Mind you, I go to maximum security prisons. I'm all tatted down, right? And I go in there and there's this bravado. Oh, you think you're better? Like, they have that natural inclination to be pessimistic and be like, you're walking in here, you're teaching us, bro, you've been here. Like, you're not better than us. They always start with that energy, a lot of them. Yeah. But then as they see when I'm speaking, they're like, dude, this guy's not on that level. He's not like trying to tell us he's better and telling us, do better, bro, live for your family. He's not saying that. He's just sharing how he was empty, and man, he overcame that emptiness. He feels peace now, and he just wants to pour peace into our hearts and give us hope to cast out all the despair. And they recognize that, man, the emptiness that I'm feeling, Johnny went through and he overcame. So it's crazy. They start with this, like bravado, angry and very, prideful and egotistical. But when they hear the story and they hear the way I speak, they're like, bro, man, I feel that emptiness. And then they stay within the 16-week program that I do. I also have a 52-week program, and they come out, learning self-control, learning how to control their desires, learning not to act on off impulse. And I see their families, bro. Like during graduation, after 16 weeks, I meet their families and they're like shaking my hand and they're like, oh my gosh, Johnny, we saw you on Softway. We didn't know you were, guiding Hector, guiding this guy. And he's changed so much. He's telling me, Mom, like, he's not arguing with me over the phone. He's not demanding anything. They change because the only way to cast out despair and hate is through love and hope. You can't meet, hate with hate. It's just going to be a big problem. So I've learned to kind of just meet people at their level, but like not in a way where it's like impulsive or like intruding on them, right? I allow them to be themselves because I get it. I truly understand where they're coming from.
What percentage of people that you talk to do you think end up actually accepting Christ?
What's crazy is like I would say the people that I talk to in prison, because it's an open program. So they have agnostics, we have Muslims, we have, we have Buddhists, and so all different people. And because I don't push, it's crazy. I think it's like a 80 to 85% conversion rate. Because
80 to 85.
Yeah, because
man, I was thinking you were gonna say, a guy here, a guy there, but it's all worth it because if I get just one, but that's incredible.
No, yeah, it's because I talk about the things that interlink us, like emptiness and depression. So I remember this Asian guy, he's an OG from my enemy neighborhood. So as soon as I walked in, the first question he asked was, "Where are you from?" So I'm from, San Gabriel Valley. And then he says, "You Chinese?" I say, "I'm Chinese, a Vietnamese dude." He goes, "Oh yeah, well I'm from this," and I'm like, "Oh for sure." And then and I knew right then and there, he's like, "You're watching," and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "All right." So he had that defense, mechanism going, and I think he was just testing me. I didn't think he was really felt like that because you don't do that in prison, but he was just kind of testing me a little bit. And I was like, "Yeah, no worries, bro. We're all brothers, And he's like, "Oh, all right." Anyways, he's like, "Yeah, man, I don't know about this Christian stuff." Like first 2 weeks, he was giving it to me, bro. He was, if God was good, why would he allow innocent people to die? He's like giving me these questions. I said, fair enough. Yeah. I also asked those questions, So I was answering him, and then he was like, "Okay, cool. That's a good answer, but whatever." But in the end, after about 4th week, or 5th week, a month into it, he goes, "Johnny, man, you talked about those intrusive thoughts that come to you when you're laying in bed at night. So because I told them I used to lay in bed at night and I would have this one thought come in. Oh, you're lonely. And from that one thought, it would steamroll. Oh, you're depressed. Why don't you have any friends? Everyone around you is living successful. You're a failure." And it would just snowball. Next thing you know, you feel this pressure in your chest. Tears are down your face. You don't know what's going on, but you want to stop thinking, but your mind is racing. Your body is tired. You're now having insomnia, so it just leads to intrusive thoughts to insomnia to just, being just neglecting yourself, all that. And that resonated with him because he goes, "Bro, I just did that like yesterday when you were saying that." Wow. And I was like, wow. And he goes, "Yeah, man, like you just like, I don't know about all this Christian stuff, bro. I'll be real with you. I read that King James was this, that, and the other. But what I can say is that what you talked about, no one has ever explained that and how you overcame that." Which I told him was there was an evil voice, an evil spirit that we believe in Christianity that pours these things into you. For example, I asked everybody by a show of hands, who here wants to have intrusive thoughts? Who here wants to be depressed? And no one raised their hand. Who here wants to be lonely? No one. Do you want to be hateful and rageful and vengeful and all that? No. But why do you keep doing the things that you hate? I showed them the Bible verse that explained it, which is Romans 7, verse 15 and verse 20. And then they read it, and it said basically that if you do those things, it's not you who's doing it. There's this sin, this evil spirit that's dragging you to do it. And that's why you regret the things that you do. And so that clicked for him. And he's like, "Bro, it's crazy how that's in the Bible. Like, I didn't know that." And I said, "Yeah, the Bible is a mirror to you." So from then on, he said one thing that really blew my mind. He said, "Man, bro, maybe I should start reading the Bible. Where do I start?" And I'm like, I was shocked. I was like, "What? Are you serious right now, bro? You're the same person who was like, 'Where are you from? I don't like you. And we're enemies. My friends died because of you. Your friends died because of me.'" And it's just like, man, and I'm like, yeah. And it went from that to like pure respect and just like, "Bro, I know what you're talking about." And he's over here. So he was sitting in the back. He moved to the front. It's a class of anywhere from 40 to 70 inmates. So he moved to the front. I see him taking notes. I look through his journal and it's just notes after notes after notes. And so I was able to see that, what if I was to thump him and be like, yeah, well, you know what, bro, that's why you're in prison and I'm out here. You didn't follow God. I follow God. Let's say I would have closed his heart completely,
Do you think that it's sort of like the sick people going to the hospital sort of thing, where these are people who need Jesus and you're going there and you're providing it? I wonder if you'd have those conversion rates if you go to a place where people aren't suffering. Let's say they've got a life that's a little too comfortable. You go to a coffee shop in Beverly Hills.
Sure.
Or would people there say, nah, I'm good. I don't need God,
I mean, I think it's all dependent on the person's heart, obviously, right? That's a big factor. But I do know from my experience, because I'm in rooms now with actors. I have, NBA players that follow me. I actually, sign NDAs with certain people. I'm a therapist, basically. I have a couple people under me who are doing therapy or who are therapists, but, under me. And, I noticed something. It doesn't matter how much money they have. It doesn't matter how much prestige, how much fame, and where they came from. These people are making hundreds of $1,000s a month, but they have that emptiness. They have that void. And that's something that I feel like God has allowed me to understand at such a deep level and to be able to unlock that for people. So that's something that I go viral for, is when I speak about these things, they say it hits different because nobody talks about the deep root of the issue. Essentially, they all talk about surface level. All these self-help books are the same, but for me, I've noticed that I get to the core of the issue and I make it very digestible for people to understand what I'm saying in a very simple, plain way, right? So because I have a GED education and I like things simple, bro. Like I just digestible. So I think everyone that I meet, I've noticed that they always resonate with me. They always understand.
Well, when you can explain something in a way that's simple, it means that you truly understand it. If you listen to somebody try to explain something and they're overcomplicating it, it's just because they want to sound smart. They don't truly understand it if they're doing it that way. If you really know something, you should be able to explain it to somebody that a 5-year-old could understand.
Amen.
Really.
Amen. Yeah, 100%.
Maybe that's what that comes down to. Now, how did Mom end up coming to Christ? Because we got to that point in the story, but we never said how.
So Mom, she was feeling same thing, that emptiness and that void. She said one time she reflected on her life. She's like, she just happened to be, sitting at home one day. It was as if somebody like told her to like reflect on her life. So she thought deeply about her life. I'm here, I'm serving my husband. They say good deeds outweigh the bad deeds in Buddhism. Why do I have such bad things? My brother's starting to gangbang as well. Johnny's gangbanging. My husband is a straight serial, alcoholic and an abuser. What happened? I thought I was doing well. And my mom shared that with me. I remember crying, and she was like, I just cried and cried and cried. And I almost felt like I was deceived. That's what she said. That was her actual word, in Mandarin. Like, I'm deceived. I've been tricked, almost, this word. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, I just was told that I have to just hunker down and it'll get better and it'll get better. They would tell me that it can't always be morning time and it can't always be daytime. It can't always be nighttime. It's going to come. But my mom was like, it's almost like I've just had this cloud over me for like years, and she recognized that what she was doing, praying, burning incense and doing all these things, it just wasn't working for her, and so she went back to her passion. She was doing piano. So my mom at a young age learned piano, and that was her hustle, piano teacher and stuff. So she met this sister from our church who actually she was teaching her daughters, and the sister preached the gospel to my mom and said the same thing. I felt empty, I felt lonely, I felt depressed. And my mom was like, how did you overcome that? So it piqued her interest. And then from then she started going to church. And I did notice a peace in my mom's heart. When I got out of prison, she was literally the most peaceful person. But mind you, she's still in Section 8. My father's still an alcoholic. He's still hitting her from, not as much, but time to time he's hitting her, he's beating on her. My brother's in prison now doing 14 years. I'm in prison, or I just got out. So she has every circumstance, every situation in front of her to be sad, lonely, depressed, miserable, but she's happier than I am. And I just didn't understand that. I was like, I couldn't fathom that. And sure enough, she would say, it's God. And I'm like, God, no way. But little by little, I started to learn that it was because of that. Yeah.
That's amazing. When you look at that and the circumstances she was going through at that point in time, they didn't change. So when you say that through Buddhism, she said it wasn't working.
Yeah.
It wasn't that she was talking about her life circumstances weren't working. I'm praying this is not getting any better, because it didn't get better when she became Christian either.
Yeah.
So there was something internally that wasn't working.
Amen.
Am I understanding that right?
Yes. And internally she was saying she always felt empty, but when she went to Christianity, she had recognized that she was an imperfect person trying to produce perfection, being her own God, being her own master, and she could only produce just failure. Failed as a mother, failed as a wife, failed in everything. So, when you see things just failure piling up on top of failure, you can't help but be empty. But then she recognized, after hearing the gospel, that God himself sent his only son, Jesus, to die for our sins, made her righteous, that she didn't have to trust her thoughts anymore, that God was going to take care of all of this emptiness. She said she clung on to that. And for the first time in her life, she said she felt hope enter her heart. What's crazy was that's exactly what happened to me. When the pastor explained to me that I was empty, first and foremost, this is a short Korean pastor, grew up as a PK, meaning a pastor's kid, never lived a gang life, probably never sipped a drop of alcohol or did even any drugs, but was telling me and understood somehow the inside of me. He's like, you live like a roller coaster. Happy when you're happy, sad when you're sad. Happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, until you're just empty. You're walking around, you're just existing. And I'm like, how does he know this? Like, outwardly, I'm all, gangster, and I'm making, at that time, $30,000 to $40,000 a month doing illegal things, and I have more money than him. But again, this man was happier, more peaceful, and had way less than me, and I just couldn't understand it. And for me, when he preached the gospel and said that, Johnny, you're supposed to go to hell, you're deserving of it, but you're not, because Jesus made you perfect. And I'm like, I am not perfect. And he's like, but think about it, Johnny. Your thoughts change every day. And I said, yeah, that's true. You're happy when you're happy, sad. Your first love is no longer your first love. You loved her a lot, but something happened. You broke up. Your New Year's resolution, right? You're going to do 10 things. You look over the next year, you probably did only 3 things, So your determination, your heart, it keeps changing, meaning it's a liar. It lies to you. One minute you think you're going to be this, next minute you switch up right away. And those people, let's say somebody says one thing and does another. What do we call those people? Liars, right? And I said, yeah, but the funny thing is you trust yourself. Why? Because this world has groomed you to follow your thoughts, believe in yourself, trust in yourself. Does it make sense now why you're living this roller coaster? And I was like, yo, that does make sense. And then he said, Word of God actually says, don't trust yourself. He showed me the verses. Word of God never changes. It's still the same today, tomorrow, and years from now. That's something you can trust. If somebody says something and stays solid and says one thing for 10 years, 100 years, that's a person you can trust. So if you learn to trust that, then you'll be happy. So it was saying that we're perfected forever. Hebrews 10:14, he showed me. 4x1 offering. He has perfected you forever, right? Them that are sanctified. So I realized, okay, perfected is in past tense. Forever means eternity. My thoughts tell me, no, I'm a gang member. I'm always going to live this way. YOLO lifestyle, meaning you only live once, Johnny. You're going to die anyways. Live it to the fullest. Do whatever you want. That's my thoughts. Word of God says, no. You're perfect. You belong to somebody. You can live peacefully starting from now if you distrust your thoughts, because it all starts from that. You'll be okay. And sure enough, when I was able to deny my thoughts and accept that, my whole life changed to what I am now. I stopped being deceived every day by these thoughts. And I've learned now to not trust my thoughts, rather read the Bible. And that's why I've read the Bible 22 times with a GED education, because I know that I can't trust these thoughts. Today, I'm real with myself. I can go right back to carrying a gun. I can go right back to my friends and right back into my drug addiction if I follow my thoughts again, because that's what Johnny, right, wants. Is he wants the lust of the flesh. I've learned to not do that, and it's weird. I didn't go back to prison after doing that, you know, and that was always a scary thing for me. Was when my Muslim friend, most disciplined person that I know, strong-willed, got out of prison. 6-7 months later, back in prison. So that gave me no hope. Mm-hmm. I was like, you know what? I'm done, because I'm not even as strong mentally as this guy. I don't have a strong will like him. And sure enough, he's back in prison. And I was so scared. But oddly enough, the more I distrusted my thoughts, I started counting. Oh my gosh, I'm 1 month away. I'm out of prison for a month now. Okay, cool. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years. And I started to realize, oh my gosh, when I followed Johnny Chang, I could only live a path of destruction. When I trusted myself, I could only live that path. But when I followed this word that doesn't change, peace, hope, and happiness was the byproduct of that.
We have a 0% success rate trusting ourselves, right?
Exactly.
We're not going to be able to do it. You can't keep God's law. Exactly. I got to throw in there, Johnny. Yeah. And carrying a gun isn't always bad. Doing it legally isn't always bad, carrying a gun. It's my obligation to throw that in there. Now, do you think some people get discouraged if they're in a situation like your mom where they become a Christian, they accept Jesus, and the external factors don't change at all?
Oh, yeah.
Like they see some pastor on TV wearing a suit with the jet maybe and saying, you know, your turn is right around the corner. Just accept Jesus and, you know, everything's going to be dandy. And they accept Jesus and they're still in Section 8. They're still getting beaten by their husband. Their kids are still in jail and everything like that. Would some people just get discouraged and say, you know, what's this all about? You know, I'm doing what you've asked me to do and I'm getting nothing to show for it.
Absolutely they would. And I meet a lot of people now. You know, I'm going to these prisons, I'm going to these you know, events, you know, and you know, doing keynote speakers and stuff like that. I meet a lot of people like that. Hey Johnny, it's fine and dandy that you're saved, your mom's saved. Hallelujah, amen. But what about me? You know, I grew up in the church. I've served God all my life and I pray every day. Every Sunday I go to church, I tithe, I do everything well. Why is God not showing me favor? And I'm sorry to say, but shows you, a gang member who's probably done some evil things, more evil than me, why does he show you favor? And I let them know, like, because God is not a business transaction, right? God is a God of love, and a relationship is more important than the religion that you're in, right? You have to have a relationship with God. So it's not about religion, it's about relationship. And so I explained to them that, you know, it's not I do this and God will give me that. Rather, God gives you everything. And I just shift their perspective. And what I mean by that is like, you know, I say, like, someone is complainful for money, let's say, oh, I don't have money. And I say, yeah, but God allowed you to wake up in the morning to make money, right? God allows even you to protect your car to and from work. That's called grace. We don't really deserve that because there's a lot of people who have died even today from a car accident. There's a lot of people who didn't wake up this morning, but we take so many things for granted because there's this heart of, I deserve this and I deserve that. Actually, we don't deserve anything. Life is not 100%. You know, and anything can happen, you know, and so I kind of explain that to them and be like, your mind, what you're focused on is like more of works when God is talking about grace, meaning I give to the evil and I give to the you know, the good people. And what you call good doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for God, from God, you know? So I've learned to give my free will back to God. A lot of people haven't. They claim to be Christian, but a smart Christian will give up his will back to God, meaning, hey, God, coming on this pod, for example, going to these different places, God, it's your will. I'm just going to come and speak. You direct my steps. I'm not in it for the money. I don't ask for donations. I don't ask for anything. I do this full time. But I believe, God, you will feed me. And it's weird. The more that I've done that, I started to make more money. I started to become blessed even more because my focus is not this idol of money or like even relationships with people. It's more of like, well, what do you want, God? If you want it, you handle it. And there's a certain sense of peace when you don't have to have that type of like, I need to chase money, I need to get, X amount of followers, I need to get X amount of fame, I need to be in a room with this person and this person. It doesn't matter. You hit me up, whoever hits me up, small church, mega. I've been at mega churches, 5,000 congregation. I've been at small churches, 50 people. Doesn't matter. To me, I just feel like if our focus is, okay, God, this for that, quid pro quo. If I do this, then you'll give me that. That's not a relationship at all. That's a business transaction. I'll pay this much, you give me this much. God wants to have a relationship. So he's going to give us things, just like a child is not going to get everything they want because it's good for them. When I was doing dishes, for example, who's going to be happy doing dishes, right? We're like, bro, this is a chore. I didn't even eat this plate. You should wash it, right? We won't understand, right? But now that I'm older and I've accepted that my parents were trying to teach me discipline, they were trying to teach me, cleanliness and hygiene. Through that, I can actually appreciate my mom making me doing dishes as a kid. And so it's the same thing. God is our father. He's our parent. We may not understand what he's doing, but we can trust and accept that he's going to lead us in the right way. So even if my mom was in that circumstance, for example, even though my father was like beating on her, even though I was carrying a gun illegally and selling drugs and trapping, as they say, you know what my mom told me? She said, you're gonna be the world's best gospel preacher. Mind you, I'm selling carrying a gun. And so I started to right there look up psych wards. My mom is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. She's crazy right now. But my mom was edifying the word because she stopped looking at the situation. And now my dad, my brother, and me, we all go to church. It changed. So when you're focused on the situation, you're hyper focused on the outcome, it makes you lose sight of everything. My mom stopped trusting, again, her thoughts and what she saw, started to trust and believe this word of God. And it says in Acts 16:31 that your whole household will be saved if you believe in Jesus. So my mom took that, placed it in her heart, and stopped calling me monster. So my nickname as a kid is Little Monster, right? Baby Monster. So she's like, you're a monster, and she would say that right when I got out of prison. She was still angry and she was like not deep in her faith yet, like fully. So she was like, Johnny, look at you. 12 to 20, however many years you've been in prison, you're evil. You don't change. Right back. You pop the trunk, the keys, in your car. There's all this stuff. What are you doing? You're never going to learn. You're going to die. That's what she told me. You're a monster. I raised a monster. And I would be like, shut up, Mom. Get mad. But then one day, like maybe about a year after that, my mom started to say something different. Johnny, it's okay. You're blessed. Mom, sorry for saying that. I'm sorry for saying that to you. I didn't have faith. I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. But I remember her saying that. I didn't have faith. The word of God, Johnny, says that you're the world's best. You're going to be a gospel preacher. And I'm like, oh, dude, this girl's super off the deep end now, But I mean, she's right. I'm over here in every platform talking about God, which is crazy to me.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to accepting that God's will is more important than our own will. Yeah. Regardless of how it turns out. It would be nice if it turns out great the way it has for you.
Sure.
But there are people in foreign countries, let's say, who it turns out they get killed.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the story for them.
Yeah,
and sometimes that happens. Or they're tortured in a prison because they believe in Jesus.
Yeah, that's sad.
And they never get to the place where you've become.
Yeah.
And as Christians, I guess we just have to be okay with that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I take it as like, I'm so thankful to even be preaching the gospel. It's really like God has given me grace to do it. It's really a opportunity for me because not everyone, like you say, gets this. There are people who are, again, getting beaten, getting even murdered for their faith, Christianity. And so I take every day with that thankfulness in my heart. And I'm so thankful even to those people, because they are literally putting their lives on the line for this. Some of our pastors in Haiti, one of my pastors got shot at over 100 rounds, wow. Because he was taking people away from the gang. And and this guy lived, thank God. But his wife got hit. I mean, it was crazy, but Yeah, so when I think about it in America, like we really do have such a blessed like platform to be able to go out every day and not really face ridicule. Yes, like verbal stuff maybe, but maybe trolling online or whatever, but we're not getting bullets, shot at us and stuff like that. So when I think about it, I really am thankful to those people, and I think about it every day. I wake up with a thankful heart, like, God, thank you, because I could easily go from bad to worse, right? So I just feel like I'm thankful, and I live in honor of that. Same thing with my friends who have passed away, who didn't hear this gospel. I also live for them too, rather than, why, God, why did you not allow, like my friend died in my arms, for example, and he didn't have salvation. Why did you let him die? I was supposed to die that day too. It was a botched robbery gone wrong. But I now live for them. I think about it like, man, God, like life is really precious. Even a day on earth is really grace. So when you think about it from that perspective, honestly, nothing really becomes a problem anymore. It's just like, man, I'm thankful for like everything. I'm thankful I have all my limbs. Like I constantly think about those things. And like I said, the byproduct is like your problem is this big, but it just becomes so small when you think deeply about all the positive things that you actually have in your life. My family's still on this earth. My brother's doing good. I may not be making as much money as I used to be, but I'm not hurting, and that alone, three things is bigger and greater than my one problem that I'm struggling with, So I've learned to think about it from that perspective and truly have hope inside of my heart. You can't not be hopeful if you think about just those things. Yeah.
And the ultimate thanks is supposed to be for salvation, right?
Amen.
Because the wages of sin is death. We've all sinned.
Amen.
All of sin fallen short.
Yeah.
You ever watch Ray Comfort run people to the cross-examination? Have you ever told a lie? Everybody's broken God's law.
Yes.
And the penalty is death. If you went into the courtroom for your YA case, let's say, or even the other one, and you had been convicted and now it's time for sentencing.
Yeah.
And you said, well, Judge, in between when this happened and now, I went down to the soup kitchen and I volunteered and everything like that. He's going to say, oh, well, that outweighs this. And so you're free to go, Johnny. That's not how it works, right?
Exactly.
And did you ever think about that in terms of Buddhism? Because from what you're describing, it sounds like that's the basis there is that you got to try to outdo your bad, which we can't do that, right?
Exactly.
You ever think about that?
Yes. Definitely, that was what the issue I had with Islam is good deeds outweigh the bad, but we're born as sinners. They don't believe that. They don't believe we're born in this origin of sin. They believe you choose to sin, and that's what happens. But, if you really read the Bible, which the Quran also tells us to accept the Injil as well as the Torah, which is the Old Testament and New Testament. If you're a true practicing Muslim, you know that you have to accept that. The Bible tells us that through one man, Romans 5:12, Adam sinned, right? And he passed it down to us. Adam begat Cain. Cain was the first murderer. Sin, all the way down. So I'm Chinese. I use the analogy. I didn't choose to be Chinese. I was born this way. My father, his father, etc. Let's say I say, okay, I'm going to stop eating orange chicken today, practicing being Chinese, right? And I'm going to stop, speaking Mandarin and wearing Kung Fu slippers, right? All of a sudden, am I less Chinese? No, it doesn't make sense. Right. But that's what these churches are teaching you. You're born evil, head to toe. You're shapen in iniquity, it says. King David said this in Psalms 51. But people think, no, I don't care about that. I'm going to look at actions. So the way I explain sin is kind of like a virus, right? And this was what I was trying to explain on Jubilee. Right? So sin is like a virus. If you think about virus, let's say influenza, the flu. And if the flu enters your body, what are the symptoms? Headache, runny nose, fever, let's say. And if you just take aspirin or Tylenol to get rid of the runny nose and the fever, yes, it will suppress it. But eventually, if your body doesn't fight the flu at its source, then the flu will then produce fever again and all the symptoms again. Likewise, a lot of people, say for example, they struggle with alcoholism. They try to take care of the alcoholism, but they're not addressing the virus, right? Which is unbelief, not believing in the word of God, trusting their thoughts. So if you think about it, it's the same as your body not fighting the flu and just continuously taking care of the symptoms. That's why they keep living this up and down lifestyle. They'll suppress it, they'll do good. 1 week, 2 week, 3 months, boom, they'll fall, they'll get stressed out, binge. And then they'll just keep living this addiction, out of addiction, addiction, out of addiction. And it's really, really bad, right? And they're living with just emptiness, and they're just existing. So what I liken the sin to is, if you were to, let's say, just take care of the flu, you don't even take aspirin, you don't take Tylenol, but your body is strong enough and you just rest, take a few days off work, then your body naturally will kill the flu at its source, and then the symptoms will go out the window with it, right? Likewise, if you just focus on depression, that's not going to get rid of the unbelief that you have in your heart, which causes the root of the sin. So once you get rid of the unbelief, then all that other sin, symptoms of sin, actions and things like that, they get out. So I'll give you an actual example in my day-to-day. I still have my thoughts of addiction, thoughts of, hey, I want to do a line of this, I want to drink that. It comes up. But the one thing I do is, instead of accepting that into my brain, it sits there and I think about it. Okay, where is this thought coming from? If I follow this thought, what's going to happen? People are they going to listen to me, on these podcasts while I'm being like a cokehead or something like that? Of course not. If I'm in my active alcoholism, will they hear me? No. So I think about that. And then I think, what does the Bible say about me? So Bible, 2 Corinthians 5:17 tells us you're a new creature. Doesn't say try to be, you are. And then it says all your old ways, habits, ways have passed tense, meaning already gone. So there's a issue here. If I trust Johnny's thoughts, right, what's going to happen? I'm going to lead to destruction and misery. Although it seems nice, it's going to lead to destruction and misery. But if I trust the word that says I'm a new creature, I don't have to follow that. Yes, that's my thoughts from before. Yes, I used to be this way, but I'm not like that anymore. And it's an active, what we call metanoia, which is repentance. It's an active distrusting your thoughts and then trusting the word of God. And that's how I've been sober since 2015. Right? It's like, of course we get urges. We're human. Of course we're going to be lustful. But I'll use another analogy. Trash can, for example. Trash, garbage inside of a trash container is not a problem. That's where it belongs. It's when the trash comes out, it's all over the floor, it's all over your desk, it's all over the bed. That's when it becomes an issue, right? Likewise, intrusive thoughts in your brain, if they stay there and don't come out as action, not a problem. But when it comes out into action, that's when it becomes an issue. Right? So we must recognize that is what true sin is. It's unbelief and it's inherited. You can't change it, because if you could change it, then Jesus Christ didn't have to die for you. But so many people are caught up in this loop of, I need to change, I need to change, I need to be God, I need to now micromanage my life. And that's why they're living this emptiness, because they keep falling short. We are imperfect beings, and if we don't accept that, we'll try to chase perfection, which is impossible. If you keep getting met with impossible, the byproduct is emptiness.
And there's no way to keep it. You're never going to meet that. And so you're always going to be falling short. And ultimately, that's got to be discouraging, right?
Yeah.
If you have that mindset.
Sure. So that's why it's important to recognize that verse that you quoted is actually Romans 3:23. It says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But the very next verse people miss. Very next verse is 24. You guys can read your Bibles. It says, being justified freely through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. So yes, we've fallen short. Yes, we were sinners, but that's why Jesus died. Justified is in past tense, meaning already just, already holy. Freely means for free. You didn't do anything for it. It's a gift, as they say, right? We didn't call Jesus. I mean, he died years ago and he did it for everybody. So justified freely, and he redeemed us, meaning through the redemption that is in Christ. So as long as you believe that, then I can believe and have hope that we get to heaven. Why? Because God didn't fail. So Jesus didn't fail. He made dirty, evil sinners like us, sick people like us. He's the doctor. He healed us. But if we continuously believe that we're not healed, then we'll keep following our thoughts. And if we keep following our thoughts, then we'll continuously produce the symptoms of our thoughts. And that's the one thing I teach everybody, from prisons to children. I do youth ministry too, all the way up to convalescent home, old people, is, guys, distrust your thoughts. The world tells you what? Follow your thoughts. No, trust and believe in yourself. What I'm saying is distrust yourself and try that. And I promise you, your life will level up. A gang member like me is no better than anyone here. I don't have a high, I have a GED education. But one thing I noticed was when I trust Johnny, this imperfect, sinful being, only imperfection and unstableness and things like that was a product of that. But when I trusted this perfect being, the Father of hope, the Father of peace, then in his word, basically, only peace and happiness flowed out of my heart.
Now, you talked about your friend died in your arms, robbery gone wrong, and you said that he was not a believer.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It hurt me a lot. I had a lot of survivor's guilt. We planned to rob somebody. He was supposed to go to the right of the car. And I was supposed to go to the left. But I guess in the heat of the moment, he stepped to the right. So,
And this was, you were robbing other drug dealers, from what I understand, right?
I was
So
robbing.
It's not like you're robbing a nice family who's sitting in the car or anything, just so everybody who's listening understands. It's kind of an occupational hazard, as we call it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we're robbing this well-known drug dealer, made a lot of money, and, so he was going to the right. I was supposed to go to the right. But when I stepped to the right, he stepped in front of me. So naturally, I went to the left. No biggie. I hear 3 gunshots ring out, and I see my friend lying on the ground. I'm getting shot at as well, and and it was just crazy. Car peels off. I see my friend there. He's literally dying. I remember the sounds. I remember everything. Like it was yesterday. And I'm grabbing onto him and I'm like crying, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like I've been in shootouts, I've been stabbed, I've been shot myself. But when you see like somebody pass away as a direct result of like your guys' planning and like you didn't even think anything of it, like it was just something that was so traumatic and so shocking that it really like brought chills to me. Like it shook me to my core. And so that day he died in my arms, and it was just really, really horrible. And because of that, I also live not trusting myself. I know my homie would want me to not live like that anymore, to live happily. And I think about it today, like if my friend was alive, he'd be so proud of me. He'd be like, yeah, bro, we made it out. Because that's the one thing he always would tell me, bro, I want to make it out the hood. I want to make it out these projects. I want to be like happy. And I just want to like live, bro, and make money and provide for my family and just have a little bit of fame. He's like, if it comes with it. But it's all that for me now. And I just wish that he was with me. But at the same time, I'm living it up for him too. And other friends who went through the same thing.
But is it sad for you that he didn't know Jesus?
It is. Yeah, it is in that way. But at the same time, I know that this is also a motivator for me because a lot of my friends who don't know that are alive now, I push differently. I move differently. I don't face, I don't force ever to anybody, right? But what I tell my homies is, hey, I'm here for you. I'm just like you guys. I'm empty too. And what's crazy is in the beginning, they didn't like it. Yo, Johnny, bro, you're saying you're righteous, you're holy. Johnny, we were there when you were loading up the pistols. You know what I mean? Like, Johnny, stop. Like if you're righteous, we're righteous, And I used to get offended by that, honestly. But now that I think about it, they're right. They're right. And, I just continuously just showed love. I would hang out with them. I wouldn't go to like the clubs with them and stuff. I had a curfew, 10 p.m., right? But I would be there eating food with them, even now. And my brother's still in my neighborhood, cousins, uncles, all from my gang. But it's not like they could stop being my family, right? Even if I left the gang. But now I'm just that pillar for them. And it's weird. Like now that they see me on TV, they're like, bro, they watch all my interviews. They're like, bro, man, like, yo, that emptiness that you feel, bro, the relationship you give, advice that you give. Like my friend recently fought with this girl and he was like, bro, what do I do? And then he kind of applied what I told him, just be nice to her, buy her some food. Although you're wrong, she's right and you're right. Just be wrong, bro. And I told him that, the countries go to war because two sides think that they're right. So telephone lines, buildings are being blown up, no peace. But when one side surrenders, says that they're sorry, that they're wrong, roads are rebuilt, communities are rebuilt, peace flows. So I told him, just be wrong, bro. Say you're sorry, even though you don't think so, and just treat her well. And sure enough, when he said sorry, she said sorry, and she's like, I'm sorry. And yeah, they hugged it out, and he was like, bro, I tried what you did, bro. Where did you learn that? What the heck? I'm like, through the Bible, I promise. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, all right. So it's a beautiful thing,
But is there an internal struggle having had that experience where your friend dies and doesn't know Jesus, and you know the truth now, and we know that nobody's promised tomorrow, right? Anybody could die at any given time.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy who didn't wake up one day out of nowhere, and I don't know that I ever spoke to him about Jesus.
Sure.
And that's tough to live with.
It is, yeah.
And so how do you go about that, where you're talking to somebody, you're not forcing them, but you're also doing it so that you're exposing them to it and at least introducing to them, so that way you're not in a position where they die, you never told them, you can't live with yourself? Or is that just putting too much pressure on yourself and taking it out of God's hands? Is God really in control of all that?
No. I think definitely it's both, actually. God is definitely in control. And what I mean by that is we are just the messengers. At the end of the day, this is not my gospel. This is not my seed. We just plant the seed. So I liken it to this. When I got shot, I had this near-death experience, and I remember just randomly thinking about like a Catholic church down the street, from my house. And if you notice, there's a saying, right? People say when you're about to pass away or you have a near-death experience, your life flashes between your eyes, right? That's actually very biblical, because through that, people start to like think of the times, they think of God. And I really feel like planting seeds is important, because God says he's going to water it, he's going to reap it. So he's the one that's going to extract it in the correct time, in his timing. My grandma, for example, hardcore Buddhist, but one of the most evil women I know. Honestly, one of the most evil. Told my mom straight up that if you're not going to make money, you might as well go out there and essentially sell yourself to make money for the family. She saw her kids. She had a few kids, like I think 7 or 8 kids. And she saw them as like basically like workers instead of children, right? This is my mother's mom. And she, hardcore Buddhist, scam artist, everything. I remember having a heart that our church challenged us, to go to convalescent homes and go to these places where, and if you don't go to a convalescent home, at least preach to the older people, because they're short to the house, meaning they're short, they can go any day. Right. So I remember like my grandma is the only one, at least from our side in the States, that I had access to. So I drove to her 3 separate occasions. The first time I drove to her, I was like, hey, Granny, I'm Christian now. As soon as it's like the car windows rolled up, she's like, Buddha's going to be mad at me, Johnny, for you even coming here with bringing that energy. So no, she was very apprehensive. And, but her health was declining. She had diabetes. She had all that. And she was, again, very stubborn woman, didn't try to take the meds, didn't care. They ended up amputating part of her leg. So the second time I also preached the gospel to her in a very non-pushy way. Told her just, I was happy, Granny. We're perfect through Jesus. Nobody's perfect. Stop saying that. You see, this is why I don't like Christians. You guys say you're perfect and then you do whatever you want. I remember her saying that. And then you're hypocritical, whatever. So the third time that I went, I made a determination in my heart. You know what, God? I planted the seeds. I can't do it. Clearly, it's not getting through to her. She's got her leg amputated now, all this. But it was weird. That day when I walked in, I was like, I'm not going to talk about God. I'm going to just be peaceful with Granny. I love her. I don't want her to, I don't wish anything on her. I feel bad for her. And then compassion, it was in my heart. When I walked in, it was a different type of energy. My Granny was more almost not so like angry, not so like vengeful, not so like, prideful. She was almost like very calm. And she said, hi, Johnny. When she saw me, she was very happy. She's like, hi, I want to talk to you, Johnny, about something. And I said, yeah, sure, Granny, what's up? And I'm assuming she's going to do the will stuff or whatever. She goes, you talked about this Jesus, right? And I was like, what the heck? And she's like, you said something that he said that we're righteous. What do you mean by that? Because I have a lot of sin. I've cheated on your grandpa. She started to open up.
Wow.
I've scammed people out of like thousands of dollars to where they've killed themselves. I've done evil things. I've said so many, she starts crying. I've said so many evil things about your mom, my kids. I've pitted them against each other. But Johnny, I'm such a dirty, evil sinner. And I was like, oh my God, it was crazy. I said, Granny, I'll show you in the Bible where it says that. So I showed her the verses, Romans 3:23 and 24. And I said, look here, Granny. It says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. She says, I know that's me. I said, does God not know that you've fallen short? Does God not somehow know that you've sinned? And she's like, yes, of course. He knows everything, right? Isn't that what your God does? I said, yeah. He knew you're like this. But look at the very next verse. So through that next verse, I preached to her, being justified freely through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. And she's reading in Chinese.
Wow.
Right? So it's deeper in Chinese, right? So I told her, Granny, according to God, are you already justified or are you still a sinner? And she just starts bawling her eyes out.
Wow.
I'm justified according to God. Amen. Yes, it's not that you did anything well. If you have this little bit of sin or this much sin, if you stand in front of God, sinners go to hell. But that's why he sent Jesus. See, verse 23, no mention of Jesus, for all have sinned and fall short. So no Jesus. But in 24, insert Jesus, game changer. So I told her that. She's like, I'm righteous, I'm holy, I'm forgiven. And the second thing she said was, I need to tell this to everybody. I need to tell this to our kids. I need to tell. And I was like, Granny, hold on. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But amen, that's the Holy Spirit. So I told her, Granny, and it was weird, bro. Like until the very end, she was preaching the gospel. My uncle would come. She's like, do you know what God did for us? And they're like, God, what? Mom, you're Buddhist. You're a hardcore Buddhist. You have $10,000 statues. Like, what are you talking about right now? And they were able to see that she was more peaceful. It's weird. She was going to her death. She should be really stressed, but that word freed her from that. And now she's telling them, guys, I know where I'm going. It's okay. You guys got to come. And she even said, I'll meet you guys there. Just accept this word. Johnny gave this to me. And they looked at me like I was the enemy, obviously. What did you do to our granny? But at the end, my third auntie, she was like, I do think that at least, mama, like granny, she went in peace. I was like, yeah, she's more happier than us. Like it's crazy. She's near death, and sure enough, she passed away shortly after that. But she was so happy that she told me, I've never felt this before. That was the same happiness that I felt. So yeah, it's not about, so it was, my main point is she was able to see, like, when near death, on death, it doesn't matter how prideful you are. It doesn't matter, in front of death, it doesn't matter how much ego you have, how much money you have. You can't take any of that with you. In front of death, she had to stand in front of that. And I think God allowed her to really reflect. God allowed her to regret a little bit. But that regret was actually good in that it allowed her to remember all of a sudden, just like I remembered the church, after getting shot, she remembered what I said. And then he extracted that out for her. And luckily I was able to preach the gospel to her. So our friends, we don't know. I don't know if my friend actually heard it as a kid or whatever. I don't know. But what I do know is I'm still going to go hard for it. I'm still going to preach. That's the whole point, is to spread the gospel, plant the seeds, and you never know who you're going to save, so that's what I do.
You said that sin is like a virus. It sounds like faith is also like a virus a little bit, because it goes from your mom, it goes to you, it goes to grandma. How does that feel how long was it before she passed when you shared that with her?
I think she only passed away, I don't know if it was I don't remember if it was a few days after that. I think it was a few days after that she passed away.
So it was not long. So you made it just in the nick of time, basically.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Because usually you hear stories about parents and grandparents passing the faith down to their children and their grandchildren, and this is going the opposite now, where you're ministering to your grandma, who's right there. How did that feel?
I was so happy. I cried. I cried in the parking lot after I left. And I was just, I couldn't even move. I was just like tears of joy, And I remember man, God, you really are real. Every time I trusted myself, I said, I guess my granny, that's it for her. I've learned not to put a period where God puts a comma. You know what I mean? So I was able to see that, God, you do everything, God. It's all part of your plan. We're just here enjoying the ride, you know? So I felt so happy. Like, how can this woman who's so evil and did all these evil things receive biblical salvation? And then, you know, obviously there was parts of my heart that was like, I don't know if she deserved that, right? People are going to think that. But me too. I don't think I deserve it either. But that's why God is a God of love. Although we don't deserve certain things, he still imparts that onto us. You know, he's very, very loving. And so I just felt that love towards him. Like, oh, thank God my granny, a evil person, one of the most evil people I know, was able to actually get into heaven, because that makes sense then why everything is by grace. Because that means I would have to be going straight to hell too for the things that I did, which I'm not proud of. Whether I was deceived or not, you know, I still felt like a responsibility to that, right? An accountability for that. But God is showing me, like, it doesn't matter what you did. It matters what I did. And I sent my son for you so that everybody could be with me, you know, and that type of love is different. Now, if I'm living a good life and a good Christian life and I'm, you know, working my way to heaven, then it's really not that type of love. It's like, duh, of course I'm supposed to get to heaven. But when God is like, oh, you're supposed to be counted out. The whole world has thrown you away. You're a second-class citizen, but I don't accept you like that. I accept you as my child. This type of love in my heart, it's a different type of love. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And along those lines, how long does it take your dad to come to Jesus?
Yeah, so my dad, shortly after, like maybe a year and a half, I think 2 years after, my dad comes to Jesus, because same thing.
How long were you out at that point?
I was out just about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad was, you know, I asked the pastor, I said, Pastor, do I now preach to my father? He's like, don't preach. I was like, what? I thought we were supposed to preach to them, you know? He's like, no, just live happily. And I'm like lead by example, basically. He's like, yeah, lead by example. So really, my dad started noticing I wasn't throwing parties at the house anymore. I wasn't carrying a gun anymore. I would open my trunk and it was just clear. It was an actual trunk. It didn't have anything in it. And he started to recognize, like, yo, why is this guy so different? He's peaceful. He's not blowing up. He's not arguing with me. I would argue with my dad all the time, not arguing with me. And yeah, he started to really change. You know, he saw that, man, this kid there's something wrong. So he goes to my mom, asks my mom, what is Johnny? Is Johnny like on some drugs or something? Because they thought I was like, you know, on ayahuasca or whatever it is. Just kidding, but you
Aaron
know,
Rodgers.
right. But yeah, he's like, what's up with Johnny? And so he goes to the church. The same pastor that preached the gospel to me, he speaks Korean. My father also speaks Korean, because ethnically we're Chinese, but they're born culturally in Korea. So they speak. So he's having a full-on convo with him, and my pastor preaches the gospel and he receives salvation that day. Wow. And so he's like happy. He stops drinking. I mean, everything starts to change for my father. And yeah, this is the same pastor that told me, you know, so many people ask me, how did you even like rekindle, you know, with your dad?
Right.
Because there's a point, you know, in my life where I actually had to say sorry to my dad. And I know that sounds crazy, but my pastor told me, you know, after preaching the gospel to me, telling me that you're righteous, telling me this, what sin was, like we just went over, he then said, I want to ask you something, you know, how's your relationship with your father? And at that time I was like, I don't have a father. He's like, oh, he's dead. Like, no. I don't. To me, he's dead. He's here. He's present, but he's not in my life. And he says, oh, okay. Well, you know, why? And I'm like, well, I mean, he beat me. And I went over the whole story with him. And then he says, Johnny, you know, please hear me out and don't be offended by me saying this, but I want you to actually apologize to your father. And I was like, apologize? Are you kidding me? I did not ask to be born. He had a responsibility to be a father. Right? He could have like stopped that. I mean, he didn't, but he just continued beating me and hurting me and drinking. So why would I, the victim, apologize ever to the aggressor? Didn't make sense. But that's when he said, you're right. Just like I use it now. You're right, Johnny, but you're miserable. And that hit me. He was right. He's like, don't you honestly, being honest with yourself, Johnny, for once, you know, don't you feel like some type of way when you go out and you see fathers, you know, loving on their sons? And I did. Don't you feel like, man, why couldn't I have a father like that? I was like, absolutely. You know, I would feel, don't you feel rage and don't you cry sometimes? I said, absolutely. You know, and he's like, so that's why, Johnny, you're right. but you're miserable. The more right you are, it directly leads to how much more miserable you are. Me too, he said. So he shared his story with his father as well. And it touched me. And he says, so because of that, Johnny, when two people are right, he says, there's no peace, right? He says one person thinks they're right, another person thinks they're right. They're fighting every day until one person backs down or they divorce, right? In this case, he can never stop being your father and you can never stop being his son. My point here, he said, is for you to really rekindle your relationship. And I believe by faith, if you move forward, denying your thoughts and try this just one time, what's the worst that can happen? You already have a bad relationship. Your ego may be hurt a little if he doesn't apologize, but I believe God's going to work. He moved by faith. So I said, okay. So I went there, called my dad. First thing, call him, who's this? So I'm already offended. You don't know my voice. I'm your son. The next question my dad says is, next thing he says is, I don't have any money for you. Dad, I don't need your freaking money. I was mad, but I was like, I remember pastor's voice, it's okay, Johnny, it's okay. Just talk to him. So I was like, Dad, I really need to talk to you about something. It's very important, very urgent. So we meet at this pho restaurant, right? Vietnamese noodle restaurant in Alhambra. I'm staring at the floor. He's staring at the wall. Awkward. It's tension, right? I haven't seen my dad all those years. I've been in prison. He never visited me one time. So, when I see him, I'm just like, okay, what did pastor say? Okay. So I told him, Dad, I'm here today to tell you, Father, that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a bad son. I'm sorry for being, screw up. I'm sorry for ruining your American dream. You came here and we turned it into an American nightmare. I'm sorry I joined a gang. Sorry I wasn't there for you for all those years when you had your language barrier and I could have helped you with bills and everything. I'm sorry. My dad looks at me and he just starts bawling his eyes out. And he's like, Johnny, no, Johnny. And I'm like, no. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a bad son. I'm sorry for being a bad father. I'm sorry for being, an alcoholic. I couldn't control my drinking. I'm sorry I ruined your childhood. I beat you. I'm sorry. And we just hugged it out, bro. And after that, it was 24, 25 years of pain gone in an instant. And I was able to see, man, pastor is the GOAT. He saw something that I couldn't see. And it was very biblical. Once I put my pride down, once I forsook my thoughts, distrusted myself, and trusted what somebody who lived better than me, my pastor, I was able to experience this peace. And like I said, through that, my dad was just we just started opening up. I found out that my dad drank so much because he ran over somebody when he was young. So he had survivor's guilt. He would see him in his dreams. He killed a kid, when he was 20, 21. And so I realized, man, my dad was drowning out his inner demons just like I was doing. We're actually so similar. And to think that I would have killed my dad, or I would have, never seen this old man, and if he died on his deathbed, I would be happy. I started to feel shame. I started to realize, wow, how deceived was I to only look at the exterior and never look in the interior, the inside. And nowadays I think about it, me and my dad, such a great relationship. We love each other. He tells me don't get too famous for me, and he's just chill, and it's really amazing.
And it's great that there's that happy ending, but what was it like on the ride over there that day where you're going there to apologize after all these years? Are you having flashbacks of when you're a kid getting getting beaten and all that other stuff?
Yeah, it was
having second thoughts maybe on the way over there. Maybe I'll do it another time. And what's going through your head?
Yeah, all of that was going through my head. But pastor had already kind of let me know. He said, don't listen to any of your thoughts. Just listen to what I'm telling you. He said, because Satan works in a way through our thoughts. He says, every single time, Johnny, you did drugs, were you like, man, I need to stop doing this? Or were you like, wow, this is life? And I thought about that. I was like, that's true. When I was doing all that stuff, I didn't really regret it. I was more like, yeah, this is great. I don't need anything else but this, this drug or this substance or this alcohol. But now that I'm going to apologize to my father, why are all these negative thoughts coming? Johnny, don't do it. What if you kill him right there? He says something crazy to you. He says, yeah, that's right. You deserve that. Then I'm like, oh, Johnny, don't do it. And I'm like, huh. It's funny how Satan now is all caring about me and protecting me, so to speak, and telling me don't go there. Your feelings will be hurt. But when I'm doing drugs and I'm drinking, he doesn't tell me that. He goes, keep doing it. He wants me to ruin my life. When I was gangbanging, he's like, this is the life. This is your family. But when I go to speak to my father, he's trying to block me through these thoughts. That's what Pastor told me. And I recognize that. So I was able to drown out my thoughts and just keep going. Yes, I might say, sorry, yes, that may happen. But Pastor's telling me that's a deception. That's a lie. Just like you're happy with your gang. This is all you need. Prison. It's like, if it was all you needed, why do we have to go to prison? Why do we have to do these evil things? Why do our family members turn our backs on each other? Why do you know what I mean? Why do we use each other? Like, what are you talking about right now? So he was able to tell me, because he knew, he had foresight that your thoughts will come. Every time he said God works, Satan's going to work.
It's pretty crazy that he kind of laid it out for you like that, and he had the walkthrough, so to speak. Hey, pay attention to this. It's almost like he's giving you directions.
Yeah.
Go down there. It's going to say the road's closed. The road's not really closed.
Amen. Amen.
They do this all the time.
Amen.
One more thing I want to say, Johnny.
Sure.
You've been very generous with your time with us today. When we were talking about Jubilee and some of the criticism that you got, people said that you weren't as hard as needed to be.
Yeah.
I think that's a very unreasonable criticism.
Yeah.
And there are always going to be people with unreasonable criticisms.
Sure.
But one of the things that they asked was, is the Bible open to interpretation?
Mm-hmm.
And you were one of the people who said, no, it isn't. And you were able to support that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a very controversial statement to make these days, don't you think?
It is.
And if you're going to that extent, I mean, what else do you want from somebody? That's a pretty bold statement there.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's true. I think that, when I try to interpret it, that's why there's one Bible, 44,000 denominations. It's one Bible. How do you get 44,000 different things from it? I mean, understand if it's a lesson, but for me, all manner of scripture is not for interpretation, as it states in the Bible. Just like it says, all of our thoughts are only evil continually. I'm like, I don't believe that. I truly don't believe all my thoughts are evil. But in Genesis 6:5, it says all of your thoughts are evil, because those thoughts are from sin. Right? If you're a sinner, how can you have good thoughts? Even the good thoughts are evil, because God is the standard of good. That's the issue.
Exactly.
Right? He's the standard of good. So he can call what's evil. We don't know. We don't know what evil is. We think we know what it is, but my evil is a different measuring stick and a standard than somebody else's evil, right? What you think is evil may not be what I think is evil. Some people with your job as well, like, oh, convicts, convicted felons shouldn't have pistols. And it's like, not necessarily, right? There's different types of, beliefs. But for me, the Bible tells us that my thoughts are not your thoughts, right? My way is not your way. Okay, so when I have these thoughts, it's very black and white. I know that these aren't from God. That's why I'm in my word. So now when I'm speaking, I'm always thinking of verses rather than what does Johnny think? Let's let Johnny assess the situation, because Johnny can't do anything. Johnny is flawed. He has to die. The word of God has to be uplifted. So that's one thing, if you notice on that panel, it was all emotional. It was feelings. Well, I feel like, and in my interpretation and in my feeling and my opinion, I don't talk like that. When I speak verses, or I speak, what the Bible says, the message of the Bible. So it's really, really, yes, it's a controversial thing, but not really, because people who trust themselves will say that. They'll be like, well, I think, and I think you have to interpret the Bible. All manner of scripture, you have to, figure it out. But it's like, no, it's not about understanding. It's about accepting. For example, how do you accept that God changed water into wine in a snap of a finger? How do you understand that? You wouldn't understand that. How do you explain Jesus walking on water, defying gravity? It's by faith. You have to accept those things rather than understanding, right? And so people try to understand, and that's why they're in this like loophole and they go down this rabbit hole of just constantly searching and searching and searching. Next thing you know, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years goes by, and that's exactly what Satan wanted. He makes people to miss the forest for the trees. So for me, I've learned that, okay, God, if you say that, I don't have to understand it. That's like trying to explain mortgage to a 5-year-old. Right. You're trying to buy him something. He's like, I want Baby Shark. I want, Starburst and gummy worms. And you're like, son, I can't buy that for you. I have to pay for the mortgage. I don't have that much. No, you have so much money, Dad. Right. He starts to criticize. He's going to it's not me that's going to be painful. The kid is going to be painful. He's not going to understand. Likewise, what are we? We are children to God. Whether you're 8 or 80 years old, we are finite human beings. We can never understand something that's infinite, right? That's like trying to boil the ocean, right? But people think opposite of the word of God. No, I'm not finite. I have godly thoughts, so I'm going to try and seek and figure out. But that's really absurd. It's not about understanding. It's about acceptance. When I learned to accept what the pastor said to me, I was able to experience peace. When someone comes up to me and says, apologize to your aggressor, and if I try to wrap my head around it, there's no way.
You'd say that's not fair.
Exactly. There's no way. But then if I was right and I try to understand it, I would have never took the steps. I wouldn't have this testimony. Me and my dad's relationship definitely wouldn't be rekindled. And I would still carry that trauma every day, right? But what freed me was not understanding. Actually, understanding is like a bondage to me. Rather, I learned how to accept, okay, God, if you say what it is, I may not understand it, but I know one thing. You have my good and my peace at heart. That's your main focus is for me to be happy. I can trust that. A 5-year-old can understand that dad is not going to hurt them. Dad's going to love them. So even if it feels painful to me, I'm going to throw that away and I'm going to accept what you say. But interpretations create expectations, and then they create confusion. Well, it says this, no, it doesn't. And then you're just now arguing amongst each other, and other religions are looking at us like they can't even get it right. Why would I even follow you? So it makes sense why they're making fun of us. It makes sense why they feel like we're not unified, because there are Christians and there are people who pretend to be, I'm sorry to say, without even recognizing it. They don't know what the true message is. They miss the forest for the trees. They miss that there needs to be acceptance, which is called faith and belief. Not, okay, babe, I'm going to be with you. Let's say, you and your wife or whoever. I'm going to be with you if you do this, this, and this, and you prove to me. Like, no, whether they prove to you or not, if you love them, you trust them, you'll accept everything they say. Oh, I went out with the girls. Oh, let me check your phone. That's going to cause problems. No, babe, I trust you. It's okay. And that brings a different element of love. You guys grow deeper in your relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I don't try to interpret ever. Honestly, I just accept it for what it is. I can't understand how all of my thoughts are evil. I have thoughts that I love my friends. I have thoughts that I love God. But if God is telling me all of your thoughts are only evil, meaning no good, continually, meaning always, and your heart is deceitful above all things, meaning it's the biggest liar, I'm not going to go, how do you know, God? Like, I'm going to be like, if you say it and you're the standard, I'm not going to go against that. That's what a Christian does. We represent something bigger than ourselves. It's kind of like a gang, right? When you're in a gang, you represent someone bigger than yourself. Hey, Johnny, that's your enemy. Oh, I didn't do anything. He didn't do anything to me. Sure. But that's what it is. Likewise, if I'm called to be a Christian and at the root word of that is Christ, I have to throw away my thoughts and accept what Christ is saying. That's what makes me a Christian. Not let me analyze and then what I feel is right, I'll take. And the other stuff, no, I'm not going to believe in that. Understand?
Absolutely. When you're talking about all the thoughts being evil, it sort of sounds like it goes back to the you can't change being Chinese, right?
Exactly.
Because we're born like that. We fall short of his standard,
Amen.
God's law. And it must be miserable when you have no finite moral compass like that, right?
Yeah.
People talk a lot today about, just be a good person. You don't need religion, just be a good person. Well, by whose standard?
Exactly.
Because if we're all making up our own standard, there's a lot of different definitions or interpretations as to what's a good person. Caden, I want to get to you before we wrap up over here. Do you have any questions for Mr. Chang as somebody sort of from the outside looking in, not raised in the church and everything like that?
Let's see. I guess what comes to mind, just I want to say, first of all, incredible story.
Thank you, bro.
Really moving stuff. And I guess to start, I was really wondering, you overcome a lot of things and incredible stuff. I was just wondering the process of sticking with that, because I've heard a bit about the transition talking here and then from some of your other interviews, but I was just wondering how you stay consistent and I guess resist like turning back to old habits, things like that. I know it's just as hard switching over, but staying with that hurt is just as difficult, if not more so. So I was kind of curious about that and what kept you grounded.
Yeah. So I what I do nowadays, I think about my thoughts. No, that sounds kind of crazy, but I liken it to like a robber, at the door, or like a family at the door, right? When the thoughts come into my mind of, let's say, like I was at a mega church recently in Australia. There was like 5,000 people. They were lying out the door. People were coming here crying, Johnny, thank you, this. And immediately I had this thought like, man, Johnny, you're good. And I had this thought, man, you're so smart, bro. Your analogies, man, that thing hit. And I thought about that. Wait a minute. Where is this coming from? Is this really from the word of God? If I trust this thought, what will happen? Oh, I'll get my ego boosted and I'll get to a point where I can't listen to people, right? So I immediately checked myself, right? I was like, what does the Bible say? We're made out of dirt, right? It says that, meaning what does dirt? It's like undervalued, spat on, stepped on. We're basically nothing, right? We produce life because of the seed that's planted inside of us. So Johnny, why did you, I started thinking to myself, why are you here today? Is it because you're a gangster and you overcame everything, or was it because God actually did everything? So naturally, I pass that glory back to God, and I remain in this place of like the byproduct that is this humbleness. I don't try to be humble. I know myself. I can't be humble. I'm super egotistical. I'm super prideful. People don't just become gang members because they're very humble people, right? They're actually like super, like they want an elevated status. They want people to praise them and stuff like that. All this hip hop is talking about that. I got this money. I got this gun, whatever. But for me, I realized that I have to never forget who I actually am. If you strip away God from me today, I'm just a gang member, and I can only end up in 3 places: strung out on the streets, dead on the streets, or in prison for life. And I remember who I actually am. And I think that's what it comes down to. Every single time though, bro, those evil thoughts will come. Yeah, you're good, bro. You're smart. You're articulate. Look at you. You've read the Bible 22 times. That guy didn't even read the Bible. Judgment comes, all that. But I think about it. Wait a minute, where is this coming from? Oh yeah, that's right. This guy is trying to throw me off my path. We have to stay a little bit vigilant. Now, it takes time to be like this. Obviously, it sounds like it's a tiring lifestyle, but it's not. It's weird. Like true freedom comes from actually like discipline, right? People think if you do whatever you want, live however you want, think whatever you want, that'll make you happy, but that's not true, right? When I started to learn that there's freedom comes from this discipline, bro, I'm like so much more happy. I don't wake up in like my addictions. I don't have to do I don't worry about, I'm very unbothered. People could say mean things to me. I'm like, that's cool. That's who I am according to the Bible. And they're just like angry, because of that. But it's just, you live more happily this way. Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome stuff. Johnny, if people who are listening or watching want more information about how to join your Bible studies virtually and everything like that, where can they find all that information?
You guys can go to my website. It's book, like open book, Bible book, bookjohnnychang.com. And I do Bible study, Zoom Bible study, private Bible studies. We go from Genesis to Revelations, and we go only scripture, super deep. We're already at Genesis 40. Everything is recorded, so there's already hours and hours of content. And we do hangout sessions after that, daily devotionals. But yeah, you guys can find me on my website. You guys can go to my Instagram, No Script Fellowship. No script as in writing, fellowship as in having fellowship with one another, and as Christians do. No Script Fellowship. That's my Instagram handle. And then TikTok and YouTube will be The Johnny Chang. THEE, 2 E's, Johnny Chang. And yeah, you guys can find me there.
Sounds great. We really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much, brother.
For sure. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you.
We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.